The great council chamber stretched high into the crystal dome above. 12 different species sat around the massive circular table, each in their own special seats made for their unique bodies. The Zephyrians looked like living glass, their crystal bodies catching the light as they moved. The Vorthak were huge and covered in thick armor that looked like stone. The ethereal collective moved like clouds of silver mist that somehow held the shape of beings. All of them were ancient. Their civilizations had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had seen empires rise and fall, watched stars be born and die. They considered themselves the true masters of all space. At the smallest section of the table sat the humans. Ambassador Chenwei adjusted her simple black suit and looked around the room. She had been Earth's representative for 5 years now. In that time, she had watched these alien species treat humanity like children who had wandered into an adult meeting. Every suggestion from Earth was met with polite smiles and gentle dismissal. Today was different. Today, she would present the most important proposal in human history. The Council recognizes Ambassador Chen Wei of the human territories, announced the tall, blue-skinned moderator. His voice echoed through the chamber with the weight of centuries. Chen stood and activated her holographic display. Charts and diagrams filled the air above the table. "Honored council members," she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to propose. "Humanity presents the Symbiosis Protocol for your consideration." A few of the alien representatives shifted in their seats. The Zephyrians made a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze, their equivalent of a yawn. "The galaxy faces challenges we have never seen before," Chen continued. "Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual energy signatures beyond our borders. Strange signals from dark space that suggest something is moving toward us, something we don't understand." She gestured to a map showing the entire galaxy. Red dots marked locations where human sensors had picked up these mysterious readings. "We propose a complete restructuring of our resource allocation and defense systems. Every species contributes according to their strengths. The Zephyrians provide computational power. The Vorthak offer military expertise. The ethereal collective shares their communication networks. Humans coordinate and adapt the systems as needed." The chamber fell silent except for the soft hum of the atmospheric processors. Councillor Zarthek of the Zephyrians was the first to respond. His crystal body flashed with colors that indicated amusement among his people. "Ambassador Chen, your species has been part of galactic civilization for less than 300 years. We have maintained peace and order for 10,000 years without such dramatic measures." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The Vorthak war leader, Kexmar, leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the table. "Young human, do you truly believe that beings who have survived since before your son was born need lessons in survival from a species that only recently learned to travel between stars?" Chen felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her expression calm. "Respectfully, Councillor Kexmar, youth sometimes brings fresh perspective to old problems. The energy readings we've detected are most likely natural phenomena that your inexperienced sensors have misinterpreted," interrupted the wispy voice of the ethereal collective's speaker. "We have observed such readings before. They mean nothing." The holographic displays showed detailed analysis of the strange signals, energy patterns unlike anything in their databases, movement vectors that suggested intelligence rather than natural cosmic events, mathematical progressions in the signal, timing that indicated purpose. None of the council members even looked at the data. Furthermore, Zarthek continued, his crystal form now glowing with what Chen recognized as condescension. "The idea that humanity should coordinate the combined resources of civilizations far older and wiser is amusing. What could your species possibly offer that we lack?" Chen felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had expected resistance but not complete dismissal. "Our flexibility, our ability to see patterns in chaos, our talent for bringing different groups together for common goals." Talent? The word came from High Counselor Veltar of the Melody, a species of graceful beings who rarely spoke. "Humans are known throughout the galaxy for one thing: conflict. Your own homeworld is still recovering from the wars you fought against yourselves. You speak of bringing groups together, yet your own species nearly destroyed itself before you reached the stars. The other representatives nodded or made their species equivalent gestures of agreement. Chen noticed that several of them had stopped paying attention entirely. One of the Trillic representatives was quietly conducting business on a personal device. That's exactly why we understand the importance of cooperation, Chen said, her voice rising slightly. We learned from our mistakes. We know what happens when different groups refuse to work together. And you think beings who have maintained galactic peace for millennia need to learn from your recent failures? Zarthek's crystal body was now pulsing with brighter colors, the Zephyrian equivalent of laughter. Chen looked around the chamber, at faces that ranged from amused to bored to actively dismissive. These beings saw her as a child trying to teach mathematics to university professors. The signals from dark space show intelligent patterns, she said. One last attempt to make them understand. Something is out there, something organized, something that might be looking at our galaxy the same way we look at a planet we want to colonize. Enough, said Moderator Talavesh, raising one of his forearms. The Council has heard humanity's proposal. We shall vote. The voting display lit up around the chamber. One by one, red lights appeared next to each species name. Vorthak, against. Zephyrian, against. Ethereal Collective, against. The pattern continued until all 12 non-human species had voted. 12 red lights, 0 green ones. The motion is rejected unanimously, Talavesh announced. Furthermore, the Council finds that humanity has overstepped its bounds with this presumptuous proposal. A formal censure will be recorded. Chen stared at the display for a long moment. Around her, the representatives were already turning to other business, dismissing her as if she had never spoken at all. She began gathering her materials, her movements careful and controlled. The holographic displays flickered and went dark. Her notes disappeared into her briefcase. Her tablet powered down with a soft chime. Ambassador Chen. Zarthek's voice carried a tone of mock kindness. Perhaps when your species matures beyond its current infantile phase of development, we might consider your quaint suggestions. Until then, leave such important matters to those with the wisdom of ages. Chen looked up at the crystal being, who had just delivered what amounted to a pat on the head. She nodded once, slowly. I understand, Counselor Zarthek, she said quietly. Thank you for making your position so clear. She walked toward the chamber's exit, her small human delegation falling in step behind her. As they reached the massive doors, she turned back one final time. The 12 species were already deep in discussion about trade routes and resource allocation. None of them looked in her direction. Thank you all for your time, Chen said, though she doubted anyone heard her. We won't trouble you with such matters again. The doors closed behind the humans with a soft whisper of sound. In the chamber, the business of ruling the galaxy continued as it had for thousands of years. None of the ancient species noticed that the humans had taken all their equipment with them. None of them thought to ask why every human in the delegation looked more determined than disappointed as they walked away. The Great Council had spoken. Humanity had received its answer. Now it was time for humanity to respond. Dr. Kethril stepped off the transport shuttle and looked around the empty docking bay. Something was wrong at Kepler Station. The massive research facility that usually buzzed with activity from 12 different species was completely silent. Vorthak feet made heavy sounds on the metal floor as she walked toward the main corridors. The lights were still on. The air recycling systems hummed normally. The gravity generators worked perfectly. But there were no people anywhere. She had come here to work with Dr. Sarah Martinez on a joint project studying dark matter fluctuations. The human scientist had sent exciting data just 2 weeks ago. Now the station felt like a tomb. The first sign of something unusual was in Section C. Kethril found herself in what had been the human residential area. The doors stood open, revealing empty rooms. But they weren't empty the way abandoned places usually were. Clothes were gone from closets, but furniture remained neatly arranged. Personal items had vanished, but research equipment stayed behind in perfect working order. She made her way to Dr. Martinez's lab. The experiments were still running. Computer screens showed data streams that had been carefully set to automatic collection mode. Half-finished calculations covered the whiteboards, but they looked like someone had deliberately stopped at natural breaking points rather than abandoning work mid-thought. On the main desk, she found a small handwritten note. Dr. Kethril, thank you for your friendship and collaboration. The dark matter data is in file folder DM7731. I hope it serves you well. Sarah. Kethril felt her thick skin prickle with unease. She activated her communication device and called the station's command center. This is Dr. Kethril requesting status report on human personnel. The station's AI responded in its usual calm voice. All human personnel departed the station 6 days ago via scheduled transport vessels. No emergency protocols were activated. All systems were properly secured before departure. Departed, where did they go? Destination files are classified. Would you like me to contact the Galactic Council for clarification? Kethril made the call. It took 3 hours to get through to someone who could give her answers, and when she did, the response confused her even more. The humans didn't file any departure notifications with us, said Coordinator Jex Lin of the Administrative Division. As far as our records show, they're still assigned to Kepler Station. Over the next few days, similar reports came in from across the galaxy. The massive terraforming project on Tau Ceti 7, where humans had been turning a dead rock into a garden world. Abandoned overnight. The joint archaeological dig on Remnant World, where human and Zephyrian scientists had been uncovering ancient ruins. The humans simply vanished, leaving polite thank you notes. The pattern was always the same. No distress signals, no dramatic announcements, no demands or complaints. The humans just packed their things and left, always making sure their work was properly documented for whoever came after them. Commander Zexhai of the Vorthak Defense Force found herself studying reports from 17 different locations. In each case, human security teams had deactivated their posts professionally, human engineers had secured their systems properly, and human researchers had filed their final reports with unusual thoroughness. It's like they were following some kind of evacuation plan, she told her aide. But there's no record of any emergency or threat that would require evacuation. The most disturbing reports came from the border regions. Human monitoring stations that watched the edges of known space had gone completely dark. Not destroyed, simply shut down and abandoned. When Vorthak patrols arrived to investigate, they found the stations empty but undamaged, with all equipment carefully powered down and secured. 3 weeks after the first disappearances, Trade Coordinator Nelson of the Melody made a troubling discovery. He was trying to schedule a routine cargo run to the Sol system when his navigation computer gave him an error message. Unable to plot course. Destination coordinates not found. Nelson tried different approaches. Old star charts, backup navigation databases, even hand-calculated routes based on stellar positions. Every attempt gave him the same result. The Sol system, humanity's home, was no longer accessible through hyperspace. He contacted the Galactic Survey Office. Chief Navigator Quintal, a being whose species had been mapping space lanes for 8,000 years, ran a comprehensive search of their databases. It's the strangest thing, Quintal reported. All the hyperspace beacons that marked routes to human space have been deactivated, not destroyed, turned off. The navigational markers are gone. It's as if that entire section of the galaxy has been edited out of our maps. Scout ships sent to investigate found empty space where the beacons should have been. The beacons themselves had been carefully removed, leaving no debris or signs of destruction. Follow-up missions attempting to reach the Sol system using older, slower methods of travel simply got lost. Their instruments would malfunction, their navigation systems would fail, and they would eventually have to turn back. Within a month of the Galactic Council's rejection of humanity's proposal, every human presence in Council space had vanished without explanation. The Council members initially treated it as a tantrum. Typical human emotional behavior, Counselor Zarthek told his assistants. They'll be back when they realize they need us more than we need them. But weeks passed, then months. No communication came from human space. No trade requests, no diplomatic messages, no angry demands for apologies or recognition. The silence was complete. Dr. Kethril found herself obsessing over the mystery. She spent her free time reviewing security footage from Kepler Station, watching the humans pack and leave. What struck her was how calm they all looked. Not angry or upset, but focused, determined. In one recording, she watched Dr. Martinez carefully label and organize her research materials. The human woman worked with the methodical precision of someone following a long-established plan, rather than someone making an emotional decision. Computer, Kethril said to the station AI, show me the final log entry from Station Commander Martinez. The recording appeared on her screen. Dr. Martinez sat at her desk, looking directly into the camera. Her expression was neutral, professional. This is Station Commander Sarah Martinez, recording final log entry for Kepler Station operations. Human participation in this research facility is now concluded. All ongoing experiments have been secured and documented for continued operation by non-human personnel. Equipment purchased with human funds remains as a gift to our former colleagues. Personal effects have been removed. Station systems have been checked and are operating at full efficiency. Martinez paused for a moment, and Kethril thought she saw something sad in the human's eyes. To any of my friends who might review this log, thank you for working with us. You taught us a great deal about cooperation and respect between different species. We hope we were able to return some small portion of that knowledge. Another pause. Study complete. Returning home. The recording ended. Kethril stared at the dark screen for a long time. Study complete. That was an odd way to phrase leaving a research station, almost as if the humans had been here to learn something specific, and once they learned it, there was no reason to stay. But what had they been studying? And why did their departure feel less like retreat and more like preparation? Outside, her window, the stars shone with their usual steady light. Somewhere out there, humanity had withdrawn to its home territory and gone silent. Kethril couldn't shake the feeling that the real mystery wasn't why the humans had left. It was what they were planning to do next. Trademaster Vexilon stared at the shipping reports scattered across his desk. The numbers made no sense. The Kepler trade route, which had been the most profitable commercial highway in the galaxy for over 50 years, was falling apart. Ship after ship reported the same problems. Navigation errors that added days to simple journeys. Cargo holds that somehow couldn't fit loads they had carried easily before. Fuel consumption that had doubled without explanation. Delivery schedules that used to run like clockwork now fell behind by weeks. Get me the route optimization files, Vexilon ordered his assistant. Which files, sir? The mathematical formulas that keep the shipping efficient. The ones that tell us how to pack cargo, holds, and plan flight paths. His assistant's face went pale. Sir, those files were maintained by human mathematicians. When they left, they took all their proprietary calculations with them. Vexilon felt his stomach drop. He had never paid attention to how the trade routes actually worked. He just knew that somehow, impossibly complex logistics had been made simple. Thousands of ships carrying millions of tons of cargo had moved through space with almost perfect efficiency. Now he understood why. Human mathematicians had been constantly adjusting the system, solving problems that other species didn't even know existed. Can we recreate their work? He asked. We've tried, sir. Our best computers can't figure out how they made it work. The calculations they used seem impossible. They were somehow accounting for variables that our sensors can't even detect. Across the galaxy, similar disasters were unfolding. The universal translation matrix that allowed different species to communicate was developing critical errors. Diplomatic meetings that should have been routine were turning into accusations and misunderstandings. Ambassador Torvek of the Trillic found himself in the middle of one such disaster. He was negotiating a simple mining agreement with the ethereal collective when something went wrong with the translation. We propose extracting 30% of available resources, he said carefully. The translation that reached the ethereal representative was different. We demand tribute of 30% of your wealth. The ethereal collective's speaker recoiled in shock. You dare make such demands? We have been equals in this galaxy for thousands of years. What demands? I'm proposing a fair trade agreement. Your words speak of conquest and submission. It took hours to sort out the confusion. Similar problems were happening everywhere. Languages that had been perfectly translated for decades were suddenly producing diplomatic disasters. The translation system had been maintained by human linguists. Their unusual ability to understand the subtle meanings behind words from different cultures had kept the galaxy talking to itself. Without them, species were discovering that they had been misunderstanding each other for years. On Zerion Prime, the atmospheric processors that kept the acid rain from killing the ethereal colonies began shutting down. Chief Engineer Nalvek stood in the control room, watching error messages cascade across his screens. The processors are designed to adapt to changing atmospheric conditions, his deputy explained, but they're receiving input that they can't interpret. The adaptation protocols are failing. Nalvek pulled up the maintenance records. For the past 30 years, human engineers had been servicing the atmospheric processors, not just fixing them when they broke, but somehow improving their performance year after year. Look at this, he said, pointing to the efficiency reports. When the humans took over maintenance, our atmospheric processing improved by 40%. I assumed they were just better at following our original design specifications. Sir, I've been reviewing their modification reports. They weren't following our specifications at all. They were completely rebuilding the adaptation algorithms. Our original design was too rigid to handle the chaos of natural weather patterns. The humans somehow made the processors think more flexibly. 3 major cities had to be evacuated as the atmosphere became unbreathable. The ethereal collective lost millions of credits and decades of development work, but the most troubling discovery came from the military. Commander HFY was reviewing border security reports when she noticed gaps in their surveillance network. The early warning systems that monitored the edges of known space for potential threats had gone completely dark. When did we lose contact with the outer sensor stations? She asked her intelligence officer. We didn't lose contact, Commander. The stations were deactivated and removed. By whom? By the humans, sir. They built and maintained the entire early warning network. When they left, they took it with them. HFY felt cold fear creep up her spine. Are you telling me that our border security for the entire galaxy was dependent on human technology? Not just dependent, sir. The humans designed and operated the whole system. We never had independent border monitoring. We relied completely on their reports. She pulled up star charts showing the galaxy's outer rim. For decades, they had known about every ship, every energy signature, every unusual reading in the vast, empty spaces between galaxies. That information had come from a network of sensor stations that the humans had quietly built and maintained. Now the galaxy was blind to whatever might be approaching from the darkness beyond the stars. Why did we let them control something so important? HFY demanded. Because they volunteered to do it and no one else wanted the job, her officer replied. Monitoring empty space for threats that might never come isn't glamorous work. The council was happy to let the humans handle it. HFY began receiving reports of problems she had never imagined. Trade disputes that had been quietly resolved for years were now escalating into conflicts. Communication breakdowns between species were causing military alerts. Resource distribution systems that had run smoothly were now creating shortages and surpluses that led to tensions. She realized, with growing horror, that humanity hadn't just been participating in galactic civilization, they had been quietly maintaining it. Like the immune system of a body, they had been fighting off problems before anyone else knew the problems existed. Dr. Kethril, still obsessing over the human disappearance, made connections that others had missed. She created a map showing every location where humans had been working and what had gone wrong after they left. The pattern was undeniable. Humans had been positioned at every critical point where different species or systems interacted. They had been the translators, the mediators, the problem solvers, the maintainers of complex systems that required constant adaptation. They weren't just members of our civilization, she told her research partner. They were the glue that held it together. But why didn't we notice how important they were? Kethril thought about that question for a long time. Because they never made it obvious. They just quietly fixed problems and made things work better. When someone does their job, well, you don't notice the job being done. 6 months after the humans departed, the galaxy was discovering the true cost of arrogance. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were failing. Conflicts that had been prevented for years were erupting. The smooth operation of Galactic. Civilization was breaking down in ways that no one had anticipated. And in the back of her mind, Kethril remembered Dr. Martinez's final words. Study complete. What if the humans hadn't been studying dark matter or ancient ruins or atmospheric processing? What if they had been studying the galaxy itself? Learning how it worked, what kept it stable, what made it vulnerable? And what if their departure wasn't retreat but preparation for something much more serious? The thought kept her awake at night, staring at the stars and wondering what the humans had learned during their centuries of quiet observation. Whatever it was, she was beginning to suspect that the galaxy was about to find out. Dr. Kethril had been living on Kepler Station for 18 months, trying to understand what the humans had really been doing there. The abandoned research facility had become her personal laboratory, and she had turned Dr. Martinez's old office into her command center. The walls were covered with charts, graphs, and printouts. Red lines connected different pieces of information. Question marks covered half the documents. She was trying to solve a puzzle that seemed to get bigger every time she found a new piece. Today, she was going through the backup files in the station's computer system. Most of the human data had been carefully removed, but she had discovered that routine maintenance logs were stored in a separate system that had been overlooked. Computer, show me all maintenance reports filed by human personnel for the past 5 years, she said. Hundreds of files appeared on her screen. Most looked boring. Routine checks of air recyclers, power generators, gravity systems. But Kethril had learned that humans often hid important information in places that looked unimportant. She started with the most recent entries. Dr. Martinez had filed a maintenance report the day before the humans left. It was listed as routine, inspection of hyperspace beacon array. Kethril opened the file and found technical specifications that made no sense for a routine inspection. The humans had been making modifications to the hyperspace beacons for months. Not repairs, improvements. Changes that made the beacons more sensitive, more powerful, more capable of detecting things that normal beacons couldn't see. She dug deeper. The modifications weren't random. They followed a pattern that turned the entire beacon network into something much more sophisticated than a navigation system. Computer. Overlay the beacon modification reports with the Galactic star map. The display showed her the galaxy with dots marking every hyperspace beacon. When she added the human modifications, the dots connected into a web that covered the entire galaxy and extended far beyond its borders. Her hands shook as she realized what she was looking at. It's a sensor network, she whispered. They turned the navigation system into the largest sensor array in galactic history. But sensors designed to detect what? She pulled up more files. Communications logs, power consumption reports, data transmission records. The humans had been sending massive amounts of information through this network, but the data was encrypted in ways that her computer couldn't break. She found her answer in an old engineering report filed by a human technician named David Chen, probably related to Ambassador Chen Wei. The report was disguised as a routine upgrade to the station's atmospheric sensors, but buried in the technical details was something that made her blood freeze. The humans had been detecting energy, signatures from dark space. The empty regions between galaxies that everyone assumed were truly empty. But according to David Chen's hidden report, they weren't empty at all. Something was moving out there. Something vast. Something organized. Something heading toward their galaxy. Kethril ran to her personal files and pulled up the recordings. of Ambassador Chen's presentation to the Galactic Council 2 years earlier. She had dismissed the human woman's warnings as paranoid speculation. Now she listened with different ears. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual energy signatures beyond our borders, strange signals from dark space that suggest something is moving toward us, something we don't understand. The Council had laughed. They had called it human inexperience and overactive imagination, but the humans had been right. Kethril spent the next 3 days going through every piece of human research she could find, hidden in maintenance reports, buried in routine communications disguised as unrelated scientific studies. She found the truth. For centuries, humans had been preparing the galaxy for war. The hyperspace beacon network wasn't just for early warning. It was designed to coordinate defense across thousands of light years instantly. The universal translation matrix wasn't just for communication. It was a command and control system that could unite different species under a single strategic plan. The atmospheric processors, the shipping optimization systems, the diplomatic mediation services, all of it was designed to make galactic civilization stronger, more unified, more capable of working together against a common threat. The humans' symbiosis protocol hadn't been a political proposal. It had been a battle plan. She found the final piece of the puzzle in Dr. Martinez's personal files. The human scientist had left one folder unlocked with a single text document inside. For whoever figures it out first, the document began. "We hope it's you, Kethril. You were always the smartest of our colleagues, and the only one who treated us like equals instead of amusing children. We came to the galaxy hoping to find allies. What we found was a collection of ancient civilizations so proud of their age that they couldn't see the danger approaching them. We spent 3 centuries trying to prepare you for what's coming, but we were too subtle. We thought that if we just made your systems better, made your societies more connected, made your communication more effective, you would naturally become strong enough to survive. We were wrong. You never noticed what we were doing because you never thought our contributions mattered. To you, we were just the maintenance crew for galactic civilization. The beings approaching from dark space call themselves the Devourers. We don't know much about them, but we know they're mechanical, they're intelligent, and they consume everything they encounter to make themselves stronger. They've been moving toward our galaxy for thousands of years, accelerating as they get closer. We tried to unite you against them. We tried to build the defenses you would need. We tried to create the command systems that could coordinate a galactic response. You rejected all of it, so we're leaving. We're taking everything we learned about you, about your strengths and weaknesses, about your technologies and capabilities. We're going to spend the next few years becoming what we need to be to face this threat. The offer stands. If you ever realize that survival matters more than pride, send word. We'll be listening. But understand this. When we return, the relationship will be different. You won't be the teachers anymore. You'll be the students. We hope you learn quickly. The Devourers are coming whether you're ready or not. Good luck. We hope to see you again someday." The file was signed by Dr. Sarah Martinez, but Kethril knew it represented the thoughts of all humanity. She sat in the empty station, surrounded by the evidence of human foresight and preparation, and felt the weight of her species' mistake. The humans hadn't been arrogant children playing at galactic politics. They had been the only ones who understood the real situation, and the galaxy had rejected them. She activated the station's communication system and sent a priority message to the Galactic Council. It would take weeks to get their attention, but she had to try. "This is Dr. Kethril reporting critical intelligence regarding humanity's departure. The humans were not wrong about the external threat. They were trying to save us. We need to contact them immediately." As she sent the message, Kethril looked out at the stars and wondered if it was already too late. Somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the Devourers were coming. And somewhere else in that same darkness, humanity was preparing to meet them. The galaxy that had rejected human partnership was about to discover what it truly meant to face the unknown alone. The first sign that something was wrong came from the outer rim worlds. Mining colonies and research stations simply went quiet, one after another, like lights being turned off across the galaxy's edge. Commander HFY stood in the war room of the Vorthak command station, staring at a map that showed system after system going dark. Red zones marked places where they had lost all contact. The pattern was expanding inward like a disease. "How many worlds have we lost?" she asked. 47 confirmed, her aide replied. "But we haven't been able to send scouts to verify what happened. Every ship we send to investigate fails to return." HFY had been dreading this moment for months. Ever since Dr. Kethrill's message about the humans' warnings, she had been preparing for the worst. Now the worst was happening. What about the emergency response protocols? "That's the problem, Commander. Without the human-maintained communication system, we can't coordinate between species. The Zephyrians are using one command frequency. The ethereal collective is using another. Half the species aren't receiving our messages at all." The door burst open and Counselor Zarthek rushed in. The crystal being's usual arrogant glow had dimmed to a frightened flicker. "Commander, we need to evacuate the outer worlds immediately. Something is attacking our colonies." "What kind of something?" "We don't know. The few survivors who escaped are speaking of machines. Thousands of them. They consume everything, buildings, technology, even the ground itself. Whatever they touch becomes part of their collective." HFY felt her heart sink. The Devourers. Just like the humans had warned. "How long do we have?" she asked. "At their current rate of advancement, they'll reach the core worlds in 6 months, Zarthek replied. "But that assumes we can slow them down. So far, nothing has even made them pause." The next few weeks were a disaster. Without the early warning network that humans had built, the galaxy was fighting blind. Without the communication systems that humans had maintained, different species couldn't coordinate their defenses. Without the leadership protocols that humans had quietly established, the ancient civilizations fell back on old habits of competition instead of cooperation. The Vorthak wanted to make a military stand at the fortress world of Kexmar Prime. The Zephyrians insisted on a technological solution involving crystalline barriers around inhabited systems. The ethereal collective proposed abandoning the outer regions entirely and consolidating defenses around the galactic core. While they argued, the Devourers kept advancing. Dr. Kethrill found herself evacuating Kepler Station as the enemy approached. She packed the human research files that had revealed the truth about the coming invasion. As her transport lifted off, she looked back at the facility where she had spent the last 2 years learning to respect humanity's quiet competence. The station would probably be consumed within days. All of Dr. Martinez's careful work, all of the human contributions that had been dismissed as unimportant, would be eaten by machines that turned everything into more of themselves. On the refugee ship, she found herself sharing quarters with Counselor Zarthek. The proud Zephyrian who had mocked Ambassador Chen's warnings now sat in silence, his crystal body dim with despair. "We were wrong," he said quietly. "About everything." Kethrill nodded. "The humans tried to tell us. I keep thinking about that day in the council chamber. The way Ambassador Chen looked at us when we rejected her proposal. She wasn't angry. She was disappointed, like a teacher watching students fail a test they had studied for. Outside their viewport, they could see the lights of dying worlds. The Devourers didn't destroy planets, they transformed them. Entire ecosystems became part of a vast mechanical collective that thought with the cold efficiency of a computer virus. "Do you think they're still out there?" Zarthek asked. "The humans?" "I hope so," Kethrill replied, "because we're going to need them." The answer came 3 days later. As the refugee fleet approached the core worlds, their communications array picked up a signal, not from the Galactic Council or any of the fleeing civilizations, but from the empty space beyond the galaxy's edge. "This is Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Human Defense Fleet. We are broadcasting to all surviving representatives of the Galactic Council." Kethrill gasped. Dr. Martinez, the quiet scientist who had left those patient, understanding notes, was now a military commander. "We are aware of the Devourer incursion into galactic space. We have been monitoring the situation and preparing countermeasures. If any council representatives are receiving this transmission, please respond with your location and status." Zarthek activated the communication system with shaking appendages. "This is Counselor Zarthek of the Zephyrian Republic. We need help." The response came immediately. "Counselor Zarthek, we remember you. Please transmit the coordinates of all surviving government and military leaders. We are prepared to assist, but the terms of engagement have changed." "What terms?" Zarthek asked. "Humanity is no longer seeking membership in the Galactic Council. We are offering to save what remains of your civilizations, but we will be in command of all joint operations. Your species will follow human direction without question or debate. The time for committees and discussions has ended." Kethril saw Zarthek's crystal form flicker with what she recognized as indignation. Even now, facing extinction, part of him rebelled against taking orders from the young species. But survival was more important than pride. "Agreed," Zarthek said. "What do you need us to do?" Over the next few hours, human ships appeared throughout the galaxy. Not the small, modest vessels that humanity had used during their time in the Council. These were massive warships with technology that seemed impossible. They moved faster than anything in the galactic databases. Their weapons cut through devourer swarms like fire through paper. But more impressive than their technology was their coordination. Human commanders issued orders that were followed instantly by the rescued alien populations. Evacuation procedures that should have taken weeks were completed in days. Defense networks that had failed under committee leadership suddenly functioned perfectly under human direction. Admiral Martinez contacted the refugee fleet directly. Her image appeared on their screens, older than the scientist Kethril remembered, with new scars and a commander's bearing that spoke of years spent preparing for war. "Dr. Kethril," Martinez said with a slight smile, "I understand you're the one who figured out what we were really doing." "I should have figured it out sooner," Kethril replied. "I'm sorry we didn't listen." "You're listening now. That's what matters." "Admiral," Zarthek interrupted, "how did you become so powerful, so quickly? Your technology seems centuries ahead of what you had when you left." Martinez's expression grew serious. "We had 3 years to prepare, and we knew exactly what was coming. We also had detailed intelligence on every species in the galaxy. Your strengths, your weaknesses, your technologies, your social structures. We spent 3 centuries studying you while pretending to be your junior partners. You were spying on us? We were learning from you. Everything good about your civilizations, we adapted and improved. Everything that made you weak or divided, we avoided. We became what you could have been if you had worked together instead of competing. Over the following months, humanity systematically drove the Devourers back to the galaxy's edge. It wasn't easy. The mechanical entities adapted quickly and learned from each defeat. But humans adapted faster. They fought with a flexibility and creativity that the ancient civilizations had never developed. More importantly, they fought as a unified force. Human admirals commanded mixed fleets of ships from 12 different species. Human engineers repaired and upgraded alien technology to work better than it ever had before. Human diplomats somehow convinced bitter enemies to fight side by side against the common threat. The war lasted 2 years. When it ended, the Devourers had been pushed back into dark space, their invasion broken by a galaxy finally united under human leadership. But the galaxy that emerged from the war was different. The ancient civilizations that had ruled for millennia found themselves as junior partners in a new order. Humanity didn't conquer them. They simply became what the galaxy needed them to be. In the aftermath, Kethril found herself working, again with Dr. Martinez, now Admiral Martinez, leader of the Galactic Defense Force. They were developing new sensor networks to watch for future threats from beyond the galaxy's borders. "Do you regret it?" Kethril asked one day, "having to become warriors instead of scientists and diplomats?" Martinez looked out at the stars, many of which now orbited worlds rebuilt under human direction. "We didn't want to be conquerors, Kethril. We wanted to be partners. But when partnership was rejected, we became what the galaxy needed us to become." "And what was that?" "Leaders," Martinez said simply. "Someone had to be." Zarthek, now serving as an advisor in the new government, approached them with a report. The proud Zephyrian had learned humility, but he had also learned to contribute his crystalline intelligence to humanity's cause. Admiral, the outer rim sensor stations are reporting all clear. No signs of devourer activity. Good, Martinez replied. But keep watching. The universe is vast, and we've learned that threats can come from anywhere. As Zarthek walked away, Kethril thought about how much everything had